You had walked over from your house, ready to visit Arthur and the boys. It was after the pre-trial. You just wanted to see how it went. Arthur and Kita had just told the judge what they were arguing about. Alfred suddenly ran out of the house. Your eyes widened and you rushed to his side immediately. He wrapped his arms around your legs and started sobbing. You knew something was wrong. You picked him up, and the woman marched out of the house, dragging Matthew, who was kicking and screaming. Arthur was shouting. Instantly, you knew something was wrong. Al, go across the street, go to my house and knock on the door. Liz will let you in, you ordered. Go now. You set the boy down before giving him a firm push in the direction of your house. He would be safe there. Your new roommates adored him as much as you did. Alfred cried in terror as he ran across the street, looking both ways as you and Arthur taught him. Now you marched up to the woman dragging Matthew, who was crying, kicking, and screaming. You didn't know her. You had never met anyone of Arthur's family members, but you knew that she was not related to Arthur. But as you watched the tears roll down Matthew's face, your heart blackened. No child should ever cry like that. What do you think you're doing? You demanded. The woman sneered at you. She was a darker skinned woman, had black hair tied back in ribbons. Was she trying to look like a little schoolgirl? Her face was caked in makeup. You put your hands on your hips and you glowered at her, trying to intimidate her without having to get physical. She seemed like the type to have an attorney on speed dial in case she needed to sue someone. Matthew reached for you, trying to get out of the woman's grip. The woman roughly pulled him back, sneering at him before looking at you. Oh, how you wanted to deck her, but you had no reason to, just yet. Who are you? She snapped. Listener, Matthew sobbed. You reached for him, but the woman roughly yanked him away from you. You glanced over your shoulder. Elisaveta and Lily now brought Alfred inside. Liz's boyfriend Roderick stepped out of the house. Elisaveta whispered something to him, and the Austrian nodded. He started to walk across the street, grimly, though you shivered. You had never seen that look on his face before, so you turned away from him, turning to face the woman once more. Matthew sniveled weakly. You looked behind him. Kumajiro was in the dust, and the babysitter, a Belgian girl, was fretting by the door. He was worrying a nail in her mouth, but she had her cell phone out and she was talking to someone. Let him go, you said. You're hurting him. I am taking my son back. I don't care what Watch your mouth, you snapped. You don't need to speak that way in front of him. You looked up at the woman, tears streaming down Matthew's face. The tears streaming down Matthew's face made you snap. You made a violent step towards her, but she stepped back, pulling Matthew with her. The boy whimpered. You stepped back. She was hurting him to try to provoke you. She would probably say you assaulted her if you were brought to court. However, your temper was wavering. You really had hoped it was the cops that Bella was talking to the phone, because you were about to snap that woman's neck in half, regardless of whether Matthew was watching or not. She was trying to kidnap your boys. I warn you, one last time, let him go, you ordered. I'm his mother. He wants me, don't you, Martin? It's Matthew, you shouted. That's right, that's what I said, Michael. She couldn't even get his name right. Why on earth would she think she deserved him? She was clearly someone who cared for herself, and only herself. Wait, what if... No way. This was Arthur's ex-wife? You would have to get the story later, but she had to have some redeeming qualities about her if Arthur loved her enough to marry her. You reached for Matthew once more, but the woman pulled on him even harder to keep him away from you. Matthew wailed as her nails cut into his arm. He just wanted to hide, disappear. Roderick now appeared at your side. He firmly grabbed you and held you back. Oh, like that was really going to work. He made you... If she made you any more furious than you already were, you were going to take Roderick's violin and beat her with it. Is there a problem, listener? She's trying to take Matthew, you said. Roderick looked to you, the distressed and absolutely furious look on your face, then to Matthew, the teary, watery eyes of the terrified boy. He pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, making his lenses flash. However, a dark smirk crossed his face, one that he normally only wore when he did something horrible to his cousin, Gilbert, for the pranks and that the albino pulled. What he did normally made the Prussian leave him alone for a good while, because that what he did could be considered cruel. Like the time he told Gilbert he sent Gilbert off to KFC. You never thought the two of them would make up, but somehow they did. Perhaps I should now mention that Elisaveta and Miss Bella have just called the police. As if on cue, squad cars pulled up. You watched as Kita and the redhead got out the back of one of the cars. Kita sneered at the woman as she walked over to Michelle. But she knelt down and gently lifted Matthew up into her arms. The redhead cuffed the woman. You felt your legs quiver as you watched. Roger gently eased you down because you had fallen slightly against him. You had been ready to beat her face in. If Matthew hadn't been right in front of you, and the woman hadn't had such a firm hold on him, you might have tried to attack her, even if that meant you went to jail or if Roderick had to hold you back. Michelle Smith, you are under arrest for child endangerment, attempted kidnapping, and disturbance of peace, the ginger said. The woman tried to fight him, but the man easily pinned her to the ground, ruining her pure white three-piece suit set. She started screaming in outright anger, and it had rained that night before, so mud was plentiful. The cop merely smirked. Apparently, someone was enjoying his job. You would have been more happy to help with that. They called it a citizen's arrest, right? That was a law still in play, right? If not, we were going to lobby to get it back. But then people would arrest others for the silliest of offenses. So maybe there was a good reason why it was not a law anymore. If it wasn't a law, that was. You weren't sure if it even existed as a law anymore. Anything you say can be used and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot provide an attorney, one will be provided for you. The man led her off to the car as the other officers rushed into the house. You looked across the street to see Alfred running over to you, pushing through the cops to get to you. He threw himself into your arms and sobbed. You felt your eyes water as well as you ran your hands through his hair gently. I let Matthew down, and the boy rushed into your arms, as well as a crying mess. I frowned and pulled the handkerchief out of my pocket and handed it to you so you would dry the boys' faces, but you used it on yourself as well. You couldn't stop, so you just cried with the boys in your arms. You cried for Arthur, you cried for yourself, you cried for the boys, and you cried for the opportunity to live happily ever after. After that, after that had nearly been lost forever. You looked out just as Arthur climbed out the back of one of the squad cars. He was not in cuffs, but the officers were escorting him over to you. He stumbled and wrapped his arms around you and his sons. You looked up to see a blurry Arthur, and he started to cradle your head with his other hand, with his free arm wrapped around both his boys, pinning them close to you. You felt a few drops of and wondered if it was your tears smearing across your face, and realized he was crying too. I smiled up at the officer. Thank you, Alistair. Nah, Lassie, you did good. Time skip. The red-headed officer and I stayed to help the two of you as Michelle was escorted to jail for assault and a few other minor charges. I had told you that they had practically won the court battle with ease. Even if it was only a pre-trial, I said it was the easiest pro bono case I have ever performed in my career. Michelle wanted the boys but had no means to support them. Her habits had gotten worse with time instead of better, like Arthur's. He no longer drank or partied, but she did, excessively. As it turned out, she wanted custody so she could then turn around and put the boys up for adoption because a couple she knew was going to pay through the nose to get children. It was for monetary purposes. It made you sick. I just can't believe that out of all the officers they send, Arthur muttered. Aye, me brother, but you needed me. You blinked. You stared at Alistair, then to Kita. They were engaged? And Alistair was Arthur's brother. Matthew looked up at you and giggled. He had yet to move from his position on your lap. He and Kumatata, or at least that was the bear's name for now, were curled up in your arms. Arthur held Alfred's in his. It felt like you never wanted to let him go, not when you knew the dangers that lied around the corner. It seemed like Arthur felt the same way. Alfred denied needing to be held, but he didn't protest when Arthur picked him up regardless, and squeezing him tightly in a hug. That could only show how much he meant to his father. Your brothers? Aye, Alistair answered. Unfortunately. Arthur answered at the same time as his brother. The two rounded on each other with dark looks on their faces. You smiled tensely, preparing to cover Matthew's eyes. You really hoped you could grab a hold of Alfred before the two lunged at one another. You didn't really want to be between the Scot and the Brit. It was like signing a death sentence to yourself. Alistair looked like he was going to clobber Arthur for saying that. Kita cleared her throat, offering a small smile to Alistair. The redhead looked at her in surprise. She had set her teacup down and stood. Well, we should be going, Alistair, Kita announced. Why, Les? Kita gave him a pointed look. He sighed and got to his feet. So the four of you were alone for a much needed moment together. Hey now, don't dream it's over. Or at least not yet. The next chapter of this series will be the last of this series because I don't know. I wasn't the one who wrote it. Just saying. It was written by Kita Kudai on DeviantArt, and I hope you enjoyed listening to my voice. That is. Um, I guess I'll end it here. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next chapter. See ya.